weird for me to be talking in English here in Madrid, but I'll do my best. Okay, so store, extract, transform, load, and visualize. And it's totally related to what Simo was talking about. You guys have to know JavaScript and some other stuff. So I'm going to be explaining some theory around all those concepts and showing examples. Okay, introduction. Name, you can find me Twitter, LinkedIn. I was born here in Pamplona. I spent half of my life in Catalonia, in Barcelona. I moved to Canada 7 years ago, so I'm Canadian now. I'm Spanish too. And yeah, that's some of the companies I work for. Of course, I'm throwing here the biggest names because it's cool. I'm always like to say that I'm not smarter than you guys, but I have pretty good opportunities. That's why I work for this kid. Okay, so that's my company right there, and those are some other agencies I work for. So sometimes I do consultancy on my own, sometimes I do consultancy via those guys. What this is all about? A little story first. At the beginning, there was data, and it was little. And analysts and BI folks in one side, and infrastructure and database admins in the other, and everybody was fairly happy. But things got pretty messy, and data grow, and we had big data. And especially analysts started to feel a little bit mad, because it was really hard for them to access the data and play with that. And obviously, data is the raw material that you have to deal every day. If you don't have data, we can just go back home and get fired from work. So how do we solve this issue here? So my whole presentation is trying to convince you that nowadays, there are really good tools that you can use or techniques that you don't really have to be an engineer to access huge amount of data. So we will see some cases. Of course, again, the more JavaScript you know, the more Python, the more SQL you know, the better. But we have pretty good tools that we can use for that reason, for that purpose, without having to be an engineer. Okay, so that's it. Basically, everything you need to do your work is to have access to the sources of data. Okay? If you have access, you can control the rest of the process: the store, the transformation, the loading, and the visualization. So big data is not scary anymore. You have to go beyond GA or analytics, Adobe Analytics. As an analyst, you can't spend your whole day checking what is there. You have to mix more sources if you want to go farther. And no need to be an engineer, again. So that's the purpose. You have to take over all this process. You have to know how to store, extract, transform, and load, because at the end of the day, you want to analyze and visualize. You don't have to spend most of your time working in the blue arrow. And of course, you want to automate that process as much as possible. So that's giving you room to spend more of your time at work doing analysis, as Simo was mentioning before. So let's go one by one, step by step. Step one, storage. Data is something immaterial until it's not fixed somewhere. It doesn't exist for us. So we have many sources: GA, social media platforms, customer relationship tools, booking system, call centers, retailing, telemetry. Telemetry is what in the video game industry is the data we collect from the games, okay? For example. And every solution you buy in your company, they come with somehow some storage solution. GA, they have their own databases. And if you have a CRM, they have their own database. So we run into situations where the amount of sources are too many, or just one, if you're lucky. The access could be really simple. Sometimes you get access right away. It could be complicated, and sometimes it's impossible. I've been in situations where working for companies that not getting access to the data I'm supposed to be analyzing. And it's crazy, but I'm probably sure everybody here can relate to that. And we have combinations of them all. So why you should be putting together your own storage? Basically because it's yours. You want to have control over that. So you have many sources that they have their own storage solution, but you want to move this data to something you can control 100%. And it's safer. If one day one of those sources is gone, well, it's not going to be gone. You're not going to have data starting tomorrow, but at least you have the historic data. So that's why I really recommend try to have some kind of a storage of your data. So build your own. It could be internal. It could be just Excel. Excel could be storing your data, and I will show you a case later. It could be MySQL server or Microsoft server, or you can go fancy if you have, it depends on the amount of data you have, you can go Amazon Redshift, or you could be using BigQuery and many other storage services Google Cloud Computing is offering. So how you put together that? If you are lucky, and all your data is already in a decent storage, well, pretty much you're done. You're lucky. Nothing else to do. If you have a good infrastructure team or IT team or your developers in the company, they could be helping you. So try to ask for what you need. If you are not lucky, you have to do it yourself, and you have to. The more coding you know, and the more you know about how to the infrastructure of the data, how to connect the pipes works, the better, because you can do it yourself. And if you don't know, again, raise hands, cry for help. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Extract. We have two moments of extraction, moving from the sources to our own storage. Barely, we don't transform the data there, just moving, tracking data from one side to the other. And the second one, that is the important one, it's from a storage to an intermediate table that is ready for you to plug to any visualization tool like Tableau, Qlik, Data Studio, or any, or your liking. And that's the moment where we have a pretty heavy transformation. You do modeling, you clean the data, all sorts of transformation there. So tools for extraction. We have super cheap ones, like Next Analytics or BigQuery add-ins for Excel, Supermetrics or Obox BQ for BigQuery add-ins for Google Sheets. And be careful. I mean, any tool you want to use, make sure it's offering some kind of automation that you can say, okay, I want that to run every Monday morning, so my visualizations, my dashboards are updated early Monday morning or the first day of the month or the first day of the quarter, so everything is up to date. So we land in the area where we have the data integration services, and those are not so cheap, but the advantage is you don't really need to code anything. So they are pretty click here, drag there, and putting together pipelines. There are many, Analytics Canvas, Xplenty, AlterX, 5tran mode. There are tons of them right now. It's booming. And it's making things really easy. So again, if you know how to do your stuff, if you know a little bit of coding and SQL, you can do stuff on your own. You don't need to spend much money in those tools. If you don't, well, you have to buy them. If you have to rely on your database administrators and engineers, when we can go to our next level, higher level of using, for example, Google Cloud Data Flow, that is a tool to connect pipes and move data from here and there and do transformations in the middle, huge amount of data. Or Amazon Kinesis is pretty much the same. Transform, and that's for me the key point of the kind of work we have to do. Visualize data is important, but if the visualization is cool but the data is bad, you're going to have somebody in the room saying, hey, this bounce rate is really weird, and nobody cares about how beautiful is your chart. They're going to be questioning your job, the work you're doing, and that's the situation you don't want to run into. So if we don't have good data, you don't have control of the whole process, from the source to reach our visualization, we are done. No success. Okay, something I was describing before, 2 moments of transformation. The first one is the most basic, cleaning our data, enriching the data, so having a second source or a third source and plugging it all together. We could be having users from GA, that is just a hash name, because in GA you cannot collect personal information, but in your internal database from your CRM, you have the name and the phone of this guy. So at a certain moment, you want to match them both together. That's why connecting again with Simo was saying, you have to learn some JavaScript or Python and have to learn some SQL. SQL is the language, is the tool to answer complex business questions that you're not going to find in any interface of Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. When you get deep and you have serious questions you have to answer for your business, you're not going to find them there. So you have to query a database. You have to use SQL. The final thing is, yes, SQL is usually more associated with business intelligence. So if you learn how to put together huge queries, you are getting closer to get better paid because and have better reputation and to be taken into more into account when you're in a room with the CEOs of your company or the stakeholders. So it's learning. It's a learning curve there. You have to invest time, but at the end of the day, it's going to add value. For example, that you have Node Analytics. If you go to the resources page of this website, they have interactive courses there, so you can learn JavaScript and you can learn SQL to query databases, and they have really good examples, really good, and it's for free. You don't even have to register. So when I'm saying learning SQL, it's not just the typical select from a database. I'm talking about queries of this kind of complexity where we have several joins, subqueries, window functions, and we can start answering questions like, okay, give me the average moving average for any value you want. Or give me the week by week, the growth week by week. That's something Google Analytics is not going to give you right away. So you have to do some math. You have to put pretty complex queries. And sometimes that's the way to fix bad data collection. If we don't configure correctly GA, and we have the sources are a mess because the campaign tracking is a mess, you have an opportunity here to fix that. Because you can refactor and recombine the data in the way you want to fix problems coming from the source. So load. Why we want to load the data we get from a query to another database? Why not connect it directly Tableau to Tableau, Click, or any other to the source we have? We can connect Data Studio to GA in 2 seconds. Well, basically, when you have a huge volume of data, the tool is going to die. There is a certain amount of data that Tableau is really great, but it's going to die. You spend there the time of 3 coffees waiting for the data to load. And we are pretty picky. And most importantly, the options to transform the data are not great. So you can do some basic mathematic functions in Tableau, for example, but if you go really deep and you really want to answer tough questions, you are not going to be doing that there. You have to transform the data before you send it to Tableau. So automate materialization is just getting data from a query and put the results in another table. We will do an example later, live show. And from this intermediate table, you feed your favorite visualization tools. So that's exactly what we are trying to do. You have a huge amount of data, you have a query that transforms and selects the data you want to analyze, and you put it in a small database. Example, this query here is a real one. The original database is 3,700 million rows. Okay, it's a huge database. The query takes to process 3 minutes, CPU time 1.7 days. It doesn't mean you're waiting a day and a half. It's just CPU time. I don't know how they really calculate that, but the number is pretty big, and it's pretty costly because you pay, for example, in BigQuery, you pay for all these big systems, you pay for the computational, I need water, power you have behind. If you run the query and you send the data to a smaller database and then you query this second database, so you are getting exactly the same data, the rows are just 2.3 millions, so it's way, way less. The total time is 18 seconds. And the CPU time is 7 seconds. So you can imagine how different it is to connect, to get the same results, to connect Tableau here or connect Tableau there. Okay? Just a case. We have a database where we have flights, 1 year of data, and your boss is saying, okay, what city and what day of November we had the highest delays? Because there's something weirder and we have to find out. And of course, you want to put together a couple of charts, because if you just go to your boss and say, hey, it was December 17 and the city most impacted by delays was Chicago, you are done. But, okay, they're going to write that in an email. You need some visualization. So a quick way to do that, for example, that's one of the tools, Xplenty. You don't need to do or know any SQL here. You just connect to the Google BigQuery. You create an abstraction to get only November, the month 11, and you say, okay, I want a sample of the 10%, because it's something quick. I don't want the whole data. I'm not going to be very granular. I just want a quick snapshot. So 10% of the data is going to be fine. And I'm going to load the results in a new table. That's an option. If you know how to put together a query, that one is doing the same results. And it's pretty simple. It's just 13 lines. And with BigQuery, you can send the results of this data to another table. So basically, you're doing the same thing. So why I should be using, so if you are lucky and your data is in BigQuery, cool. If you are not lucky, you have to use tools like Xplenty or any other, okay? Or if you don't know how to put together a query in SQL. So there are many ways to do that, but the more you know, the more options you have to transform your data, and the cheaper it's going to be in the long run. And finally, we arrive to the visualization part of the equation. So 2 or 3 things I like to make sure. It's not the same a dashboard that a visual analysis tool. Excel, it could be a dashboard, basically. It's really hard to do visual analysis in Excel. Tableau, Qlik are typical tools where you can do both. You can put together dashboards and distribute them across the company, or you can just throw data there and spend hours trying to find out something interesting and give you an idea to where you can get deeper and analyze further. And insights are the outcome of your work. I mean, vendors tell you, hey, you're going to buy this tool, you plug your sources, you create your dashboards, and you're going to get insights right away. False. Never. It's a selling point. But if you buy that, you're done. You have to spend hours analyzing and figure out things and talking to some other departments and putting together all the information. And finally, you have some insights. You know why things happen, and you know you are ready to predict, or you're ready to provide some value to the company that at the end of the day is your work. Factors determining what and how. So quite large list. It depends a lot of many things like politics, how much money your company could be spending in a visualized tool, or a tool to put together all the process from the raw data to the visualization. What's the infrastructure available? What tools you can have in your hand? So it's pretty complex. You have too many options. So which or what kind of visualization tools you could be asking? Again, Excel. You can go to big guys like Tableau and Qlik. You could be going to middle guys like Data Studio. It's pretty new. Fortunately, you can play with them. It doesn't matter if it's a desktop or online solution. That's going to be impacting a little bit how everything performs, but why not? And you have more tools based on things like D3 JavaScript. Those are open source and they're cool. But if you want to go fairly quick and you want to put together a dashboard in a certain limited amount of time, it's going to be hard. That's what I don't really recommend getting into that. So 3 types of dashboards I really like. The first one, Lady Gaga dashboards. You can see the reason why those are Lady Gaga dashboards. Then we have the Tron legacy dashboards. Basically black background, I hate that. Or blue, dark blue. And Data Studio is coming with some templates you can use, and it's going to happen the same thing that happened with Excel time ago. Most of us, we use the default templates or the default charts, the default visualizations coming from the tool, and most of the times they're horrible. So, and the third type of styles of visualizations are pretty clean, pretty minimal. Something that, okay, it's not fancy, but the focus is pretty clear where you want your audience to look at. And this is done with Excel. You don't really need a fancy tool. So what's important here? Okay, pretty simple to guess. So that's basically what happens. You buy the tool, you start playing with that, and you think you are great, and you're doing super beautiful dashboards and useful. And most of the time, when I look at dashboards made by people, this is what it looks to me. And to make sure I don't have an international conflict, this is the Spanish version of the Exeomo, and this is the Canadian version of the Exeomo. So please educate yourself in aesthetics. I mean, you are not going to be a Picasso right away opening Excel and plugging charts right there. You have to work on your visualization. So never use default charts. Spend time playing with that. And cultivate yourself. I really encourage you to write a book by Giulio Carlo Argan, El Arte Moderno. I'm not sure if it's pretty easy to find, but I think it's in Google Books. And focus, please, on art movements based on rationalism, minimalism, and functionalism, because those are 3 of those art styles are totally related with the kind of job we have to do when we put together a dashboard or a visualization. And follow the masters. We have Edward Tufte, Stephen Few, Robert Cosara, and Alberto Queiro, for example. Those are 4 or 5 guys you can follow in Twitter. They have blogs, they write books. You can educate yourself in the visualization aspect. So let's go to the examples. First example, franchise-based business, the very minimum infrastructure. I couldn't get to the database. So we were having sources like Google Analytics, AdWords, the call center, and the booking system. So, okay, there were parts that were pretty manual. I was having to convince the call center to send me Excel files every week. But using a plugin like Next Analytics in Excel and using Windows Task Scheduler, I could put together dashboards and automate them for the marketing team, weekly, monthly dashboards, and dashboards for every franchise in the company. So, well, it's pretty simple, but it was effective. It was working. And the total amount of money invested, it was just the license that was at that time like $45 a month. So it was super cheap. Another example that's a little bit more complex. So we have a large department store group. They're sending offline from the store's data. They have the internal store, and they send that to a storage, to BigQuery. the other side, we have Google Analytics. And they're using RStudio Server to do the extraction, the transformation, and they were using Plotly and Shiny to create the dashboards. Plotly is a library that works pretty fine with RStudio, and Shiny, it's like a plugin that puts together everything in the shape of a website. So basically, you're creating a dashboard-based, web-based dashboard. They moved to a second kind of solution because it was more agile. So having RStudio in the middle to do the extraction and the transformation, sending everything to MySQL database, and connecting QLink in that case to the intermediate table. And it's working fine. A sports equipment company. Why sending data from many different GA views? Well, you can connect Analytics Premium with BigQuery directly, but you can connect only one view. In the case of this company, they have many different views. They are a large organization with online stores all across the globe. So they have many different views. And for example, BigQuery is not exporting demographics data from GA. And they really like that part of the information. They really like demographics. So they were using Analytics Canvas to extract data from a bunch of GA views using the API, sending everything to BigQuery, then again, using Analytics Canvas to transform the data, and the output was the typical TD file sent to Tableau server to do the dashboards in Tableau. And finally, before we go to lunch, live example. I don't know. Can I use both? Is this working? Hey. Yeah. So I'm going to show you in 3 minutes how to extract from a fairly big table in BigQuery, how to extract and do the transformation using app scripts. That's JavaScript, basically, that you can associate with Google Spreadsheets or Google Docs, or just use it in its own. Schedule that to get your reports updated every Monday morning. And finally, for the sake of the example, I'm going to be using Data Studio so you can see exactly how this works. And basically, 30 lines of JavaScript code and 10 minutes, and it's totally free. Yep. Okay. So here we have Data Studio connected to BigQuery table. We're going to show number of flights and the average delay. And that's the month of January. So it goes from January 1st to January 31. And we want that to be automated every month, at the beginning of every month. So what we have here, we have BigQuery. This, for the sake of the example, is a pretty simple query, but Flights Master is the huge database. We have a year of flights here. You can see is the number of rows is 70 million rows. So it's 7.95 gigabytes. It's not huge, but well, it's complex. And we're going to be sending that every month to an intermediate table where we are only getting the numbers we want, the total amount of flights and the average delay. So it's pretty simple, but we get the query here. We use a minifier to get the query in a single line. You open a Google spreadsheet. You can do calculate the time, so previous month or previous week or previous day. I like to use the functions from the spreadsheet because dealing with JavaScript dates, it's a pain. So that's a fairly simple way to calculate a previous day or previous month. So here you have tools, script editor, and it opens an editor where you can write JavaScript. Here and that's everything you need. So we have the 2-3 lines are getting the value from here, or any of the cells you want. Then you have the query that we put in a single line, and we have at the end, so I'm passing here the variable. I need a mouse. Okay. And the only thing you need else is just the configuration details. What project in BigQuery you're going to use, the dataset ID, and the new table. So we're going to be sending that to a table. It's called Flights 2012. And that's it. You can schedule that to run every, let's say, time-driven, every month, the first day of the month, and it's going to run automatically, so you don't have to do anything. I'm going to run that manually. So here you have, again, data from January. I'm going to make sure I send data from February. So it's second month. I do that manually, so that's why I'm running. It's working in the background. You open again your dashboard, and that's it. You have January and February. So you can automate that to run again every week, every month, every quarter, whatever. And it's super simple. If you have a little bit of knowledge of JavaScript, a little bit of knowledge of SQL, and the data in a decent storage. And that one is for free. Almost there. 2 more cents of advice. Don't try to sell working for a company. Don't try to put together the biggest project possible, because it's going to take a lot of time. The stakeholders are going to get frustrated because you're not going anywhere. There are too many moving pieces. So you better start small, even if are not so cool tools like Excel. But if you're going to get quicker results, you could be convincing the stakeholders to put more money in the project. Plan all the process, the storage, the extraction, the transformation, the load, and the visualization according to circumstances. Don't be too ambitious. Don't just buy the first solution they're trying to sell you. So there are tons of tools right there. Ask for demos, grill them down, ask all sorts of questions. And it tends to get messy. It's you're never going to achieve the first attempt to have the whole process nailed down. So it's a learning curve, but it's there. Gracias a todos. Gracias a estos dos por arrastrarme hasta aquí. Y gracias a Clara y a Laura por su colaboración conmigo. Gracias.